Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Alain. As you can see, we have a special guest this morning. I'm excited to have Randy on the show. Randy King is the author of this brand new book, The Timeline of Self-Defense. I'll be honest, I just got it Tuesday because that was the day it was released. So I'm only a short ways into the book, but I'm liking what I'm reading so far because Randy and we teach some of the same kind of stuff. We have a similar philosophy on safety and self-defense and keeping yourself safe. I've followed Randy on social media for a number of years. Our paths have never crossed in person yet. It's always just been online interactions, but it's great to have him on the show talking about this new book. And so for those of you that aren't familiar with Randy, if you haven't seen his stuff on social media, I'm going to ask Randy to give us a little brief introduction and a little about you, Randy.
Great. Number one, Alain, thanks for having me. I appreciate you taking the time out to chat with me. Number two, my name is Randy King. I am a internationally based self-defense instructor. I reside in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, so I'll try not to throw too much Chesterfield and a boots at you with my accent. I've been in the personal protection space, self-defense, conflict communication for the last 2 decades. This is my full-time job. I'm one of those rare humans that doesn't have like a pension or a rich spouse or a day job. I do this full time. And so I put my daughter into college. I have been doing martial arts since I was 10 years old. So what is that? 35 years. I was a bouncer and then a bodyguard. While I was a bouncer, I had a bunch of weapons encounters, including being stabbed a couple of times. And all of that kind of accumulates into the book, The Timeline of Self-Defense. And I teach seminars literally all over the world. So I've taught in 14 countries and 80 cities.
Awesome, Randy. Thank you. And, I know that you always like drinking out of that Avengers mug.
Yeah.
So I have an Avengers mug today, too. So
is so cool. Thank you.
We both got Avengers mug. I made sure I grabbed that one for today. And, you mentioned you've been stabbed. For the audience to know that Randy and I share something in common, we've both been stabbed by forks.
Yes, we're both fork stabbies. I remember that. That's right.
Where were you stabbed? I was stabbed in the chest.
Mine was on this forearm. I put my hands up defensively and like in a negative grip. He just, it got me right here.
Yep. I had 4 little puncture holes in the chest.
They're so embarrassing. They're just so little.
I was most mad about they got blood on the shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
And holes in the shirt.
Yeah, it heals up fast. Shirt stains are a problem. Skin heals.
Right. So you mentioned that, your life's work is, put into this book.
Yes.
In a nutshell, before we get deep into stuff,
sure.
What is the book about? I mean, what is the timeline of self-defense?
So it's a very basic pitch. I was actually shocked that nobody else called their book this, because almost everybody out there talks about how either through physical skills exist on a timeline or the whole encounter exists on a timeline. So the purpose of this book was to give you the entire picture of what personal protection and safety looks like. So this is not just your regular macho, you could take out 8 attackers with this secret technique sort of book. It covers all aspects of the timeline before, during, and after, right? All the way from like, what kind of training should you select for who you are as a person? How I gauge training that I believe is successful. We go over common myths in self-defense. You're probably at that part already in the book where we go over like these very common things that everybody's heard, but like nobody really talks about, at least not into a deep enough level. And then after we get all that base knowledge, we keep tying back those first few chapters as we walk down the timeline of self-defense. I have worked with everything from people who are in halfway houses and domestic abuse shelters to CEOs and SWAT officers. And every single one of them has the same sort of process. While the intersection points are different, the timeline is identically the same. So the point of this book is, my goal is you can give this book to your kid, your teen, your friend that takes that art that you like to make fun of because it wouldn't work on the street or whatever. And this will give them all the skills they need to make whatever they're doing self-defense applicable, because self-defense and martial arts are 2 very different things. I say it in the book a lot, but it's become kind of my catchphrase. self-defense training is closer to safety training than it is to fight training. In that, the goal of self-defense is no incident happens. It's not, oh, when he gets me to headlock, it's why do we even get in a headlock in the first place? Now, while that's not always avoidable, a lot of people tell me in their debriefs that the violence came out of nowhere. And the book kind of points out that just because you didn't notice it doesn't mean it came out of nowhere.
A lot of early signs. Let's say good morning to a couple people.
Good morning.
Dixon's here and said, good morning, Randy.
Hey, a boot, Chesterfield toque.
Jay and Vicky are here and said, good morning. Thank you guys for being here. Thad's here, said good morning, said thanks for sharing. Thank you for being here, Thad. I like when you talk about that, that martial arts and what really happens on the street are different. I mean, because I've been a martial artist since the 70s when I started. And while there have been times on the street where some of my martial arts has been applicable and worked even close, like a judo throw, similar to a judo throw in the randori competition. And I have really used Hapkido joint locks for real. However, and I always point this out, when I have used Hapkido joint locks, it was working security. And I went up to that guy. He wasn't fighting me. He didn't know what I was going to do. And so I always say you need surprise, you need accuracy of technique and speed to make a joint lock work. Yeah. Because if you're missing one of those, he's not going to let you put a joint lock on. Exactly. And if he's throwing punches and stuff, you're not joint locking. You're trying to keep from getting hit and hit him back. And it looks nothing like your choreographed martial arts stuff. Is that similar to what you're talking about in the book?
Absolutely, especially on so that's very much the during phase, right? Something is already happening. We have to deal with it. I talk a lot about like what your options are. I was a bouncer and bodyguard for 11 years. So I was doing this a lot. It's the same fight over and over again, right? Same couple of drunks, but there was a bunch of things that happened in that area. And that's what you learn very quickly, right? You can't rely on techniques. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to go for this wrist lock. You kind of have to rely on the gifts that are given to you, right? Oh, he grabbed me, which I know can get a wrist lock from here, right? So it's a lot of, I like to say the skills are proactive, but it's not the techniques that are proactive. It's the goal. What is the goal of this encounter? Is the goal to get home? Is the goal to eject this person from the building? Is the goal to get handcuffs on them? Is the goal to make sure my ice cream cake doesn't melt in my back seat during road rage? Like, what is the goal of this encounter? And then the goal will help you set up your techniques. This is the issue a lot of people go through is exactly like you said, Alain, is they only train that worst case scenario, right? Or what if they're bigger, stronger, faster, and they don't train all the levels of force that can happen. There are sometimes cooperative people where a lot of the stuff that the internet says doesn't work will work. A gooseneck, not my favorite wrist lock because of snapping back and breaking noses, but getting somebody in that connection point, right, is easy when they're passively resisting or being kind of cooperative. But if the person's full on swinging, you might need to change your strategy to maybe a different part of your art, right? So you need to have skill sets all along the use of force. We use a wheel here in Canada, all along the use of force wheel, but also that also applies to your soft skills. And that's what the book is about, right? It's injecting those soft skills. It's, hey, yeah, you need to learn how to de-escalate. But also, do you know how to de-escalate differently between a person who's going through a crisis or just somebody who's mad at work? Because the while similar, you'll have to vary. So the goal, I think, or the main message in the book is treat your soft skills or your proactive skills at least as equal as you train your physical skills, because those are the ones that are going to avoid what's going on. And if your true goal is self-defense, your true goal is getting home to your family, whatever mantra you have, then you don't want the fight. You don't want to prove your stuff works. You just want to move on with your life.
I would almost say that it's not 50-50, that those soft skills are a higher percentage. There are so many times that people get into physical altercations that could have been avoided completely. Yeah. And that's why when I teach situational awareness, I use Cooper's color code and talk about that. But then I say, what's the other thing you have to be aware of? And often I get blank stares. So you have to be aware of what you are doing and how that affects your safety. Because a lot of times it's your own behavior, your actions, your behaviors, maybe what you say. Mm-hmm. I use an extreme example, going to a bar full of Hell's Angels.
Sure.
I've done that and I've gotten along just fine. Yeah. But what if I went into that same bar, jumped up on a table and said anybody that rides a Harley and wears black leather is an idiot, with a bunch of cuss words thrown in for emphasis?
Yes, exactly.
Same place, same people, but it's what I do that makes all the difference if I go home or not.
Absolutely. And I agree. I'm fighting for 50-50. I agree. It's way more. The problem is people are going to gyms and they're training in a Charlie Chaplin film, i.e. nobody's talking. They're just hitting pads, right? So nobody's swearing. Nobody's using offensive language. If the gym is proper, there's hygiene rules. So nobody smells. The ground is soft, right? There's all these things in the lab that we need to do when we're training. I'm advocating for us to inject more. If only if your goal is self-defense. If your goal is competition, don't listen to me. This book isn't for you. It's for somebody else. But if your goal is self-defense primarily, then you should be interjecting boundary setting, words, situational awareness, weapon draws. When you're on the ground, you should be training to, like, when you're wrestling, to pop up and look around. I call it the groundhog drill, right? Where, gophers pop up and look around. When we're wrestling, I'll yell groundhog, and then people have to look to see if another person is coming, right? So the goal of this, like I said, is no incident happens. As we keep drifting more towards like the physical side of this, which is very important, that's where the training, I think, needs to change slightly. I remember vividly, I went to a training at an MMA gym because I love MMA. I think it's great. I watch all the fights. I think it's a great physical system. And we were there and they were talking. The guy was, I don't know if he was playing to the crowd because I was there, but he did this like 5-minute talk on escape. Hey, you have to escape if you blah, 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 right? Which is great. Words are important. But then the next drill, Alain, was, all right, everybody get in the cage. We're going to lock it. You have to fight for 5 rounds. It's like, okay, so we just talked about escaping, but the physical drill you gave us has no room for escape. So while you're saying all the right words, actions will always beat words. So what the client is hearing is, yeah, my coach says escape, but when we train, we're so tough that we would never escape, right? And that's just one of the disconnects when it comes to the sport versus self-defense kind of thought process.
And that's a great point because, again, it's important. I mean, I tell people all the time, we don't need to make this guy submit. We don't need to do all these different things. If we can create an opening and escape to safety, we've won.
Exactly.
But I'm not teaching in a cage. I'm not an MMA guy. So, but,
sure.
But exactly. But you're a great point that if you're saying that, but not practicing,
the next drill should be an escape drill, right? Like I have built in the most stolen drill that I have, which please steal everything from me. I'd rather you rip me off because I know the information's good than rip off somebody bad. So feel free to take whatever you want from me. I have free courses and everything. But when we're looking at stuff like if your self-defense class doesn't have a way for you to train escaping, then they're not really focusing on self-defense because escape is one of the major options. And escape doesn't just mean running. Because the first interjection point I get here is, well, I got bad knees, so I'll just pull my gun. Hey, can you drive away? Can you lock your door? Can you, escaping is distance management. It's just getting away from who that person is, right? But reframing this, because the current state of self-defense, despite a lot of people in my group, we have a little echo chamber that I'm in with Rory and everybody, right? Where we think this is moving forward, but the general masses are still very much self-defense is fight first. It is physical first training. And we're trying to either change that or read this book and do what you want. Because I firmly believe if you read this book, you have enough base knowledge and self-defense, soft skills, both before and after the situation, that you can train however you want to train. Because it's also okay to train martial arts for fun, right? It doesn't always have to be I mentioned in the book, I categorize arts into 4 categories, right? So category 1 is time capsule arts. Those are arts where you're trying to be like the instructor, right? So if you're trying to be like Bruce Lee or Masato Yama or Conor McGregor, you're in a time capsule art. You're trying to replicate what they did at that time. Okay, lots of traditional arts fall here. Then there's sport arts. That's us getting better. It's about me. Then there is combative arts. It's about ending the threat without any worry about legal consequences or aftermath. And then there's self-defense, which again is safety training. And we're trying to get to you that the goal is to leave or to end the encounter with as little friction on your life as possible. So that includes legal ramifications, etc. So just understanding that and knowing where you're training and what you're training for is going to inform your self-defense strategy.
And that's a great point. I'm glad you point that out. I often talk about things in the martial arts that we train for the tradition, it's the art. Even if it doesn't have it's not applicable on the street necessarily. I mean, I'm never going to be chambering at the waist and, doing, things like that. But it's part of the art. And it's the heritage and history, and I want to preserve that part.
Yeah.
And so I think there's value in that, even if there's not value fighting in the street, protecting yourself.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And this is my, as you'll read in the book, this is kind of my grandstand is I'm so tired of people just interjecting what they do as self-defense, right? Because it's giving the wrong goal set to the person. It's like, okay, I'm waiting for you to attack. I like to make the joke. There's lots of systems that work off counter assault, right? Somebody does something, you have some kind of reaction. There's a bunch of shapes, but they're either a long triangle or a short triangle. That's it. Those are the options, right? Then it's branding. Oh, it's this weapon, it's this animal, it's this whatever, right? Those arts a lot of the time are just standing there waiting for somebody to punch them. They're not even listening to what's happening. They're not trying to de-escalate. They're not trying to solve the problem. There's like, the second this person moves, I'm going to use my super cool animal ancient weapon technique and I'm going to get you, right? And that's not self-defense. That's combatives in a self-defense coat. You're waiting for it to go physical. That should be the last resort. I'm not saying it won't go physical, but like you said earlier, you'd be shocked how often the worst part of your self-defense strategy is self. It's you. It's you talking yourself into fight. It's your ego. It's you not letting stuff go, right? All that stuff is addressed in the book because I was a young man. I was under 25 for a while, and I wasn't making the best life choices, right? I was taking all comers and being a young man. My brain wasn't fully formed. This is going to happen. So just the more education we can have out there on what it looks like, right? And also breaking the Hollywood fantasy of I get in a fight with 6 people and then go home with the hot chick. Like, no, you're going to the hospital, bro. Like you have 6 weeks off of work. You're going to have a bad couple of days. The police are going to talk. You might be in handcuffs, right? And even if it's not that extreme, maybe your grandma's pissed off at you because you beat up your drunk uncle at a family reunion, right? Like you need to know that while violence is always violence is an option, and it's a very effective option when it's necessary, society is built with so many other off-roads that if your only tool is violence and all of your thinking is, if I'm defending myself, there must be violence, you might get yourself into trouble.
Oh, great point. Jay said bingo at one of our comments. I forget just which one, but thanks, Jay. Dixon said we need to make before, during, and after as popular as the OODA loop.
I agree. Share the book. Just kidding. But no, I do agree. Thanks, Dixon.
Thanks, Dixon. So what do you think is the most important? I mean, they're all important, but if you had to pick one soft skill that would keep people from violence, what do you think is the most important, or maybe the one that's most missing that people should really practice and incorporate?
So I think the really interesting thing when you move down the timeline is the deeper you get to an actual encounter, the harder you have to work. Does that make sense? So like situational awareness is pretty easy. If you're just staying curious and looking around, like that's pretty low effort, pretty low caloric expenditure. When we get to de-escalation, that's a little bit more tiring, right? We're talking, we're chatting, or whatever. And then if it gets physical, or I'm trying to establish or whatever, then that's very exhausting. Get to your fight, flights, freezes, fawns, whatever, right? So I think, honestly, let's do the low effort one first. Situational awareness has to be one of the most important things. Both situational awareness externally and internally. And what I mean by that is externally, where are you? Sure, but where are you now? But also, where are you in life? Who are you hanging out with? What decisions are you making? What are your hobbies, right? And also internal. I am a 6'1", 202 many pound man. A lot of dudes aren't picking fights with me. Even with the gray and the beard, they're not like, that's the target, right? Unless I hurt my leg or I'm in a cast, then that sort of switches, right? So knowing the situations you're in is important, but also knowing what to look for, because I find too much situational awareness training kind of baffles people with BS. They give you like choke points and this and lighting and environment and factors and patterns and baselines and left or right of noises. And it's a lot of information when you can just realize like 90% of information I don't have to worry about because I'm not on that target profile, right? So knowing internally, what could I be selected for? My daughter is going to university next year. We're having some chats, right? Because when I was in school, the crimes that I was selected for, or the bullying or whatever kind of conflict, is going to be much different than what she encounters, right? So we have to understand that self-defense isn't like a blanket term. Self-defense is deeply personal. What do you need? If you live in an urban center, lower socioeconomic, you need different skills than if you live alone on a mountain, right? So understanding who you are, what you do, and who you hang out with changes a lot of that. I think that would be the number one skill, because as much as I would like to say, hey, how hard you kick or punch or choke is the deciding factor, there are mixed martial artists who are in abusive relationships. There were boxers in abusive relationships. It's not just this physical thing. So if you can clean up your environment, that's going to be one of the highest tools for safety. I have 3 pillars of self-defense that I talk about that I haven't heard anybody else talk about in the space. Maybe they do and I just publish it first. But number 1 is personal value. If you do not believe you're worth defending, all the rest, this is a waste of time. I have run into people who are like, oh, why just let the person do what they did because I'm a piece of garbage? Why would I stop them? There is no key all loud enough that will get that out of somebody's system. They need to do their therapy training, that sort of stuff, right? They need to talk to a counselor. So if you don't believe you're worth defending, you're not going to defend yourself. Number 2 is boundaries. I say that boundaries are the operational manual for how people get to talk to you, right? Perfect example. Me and Alain set this up. He said we're starting at 8 o'clock. That's a boundary. If I showed up late, he could be like, hey, dude, we said 8 o'clock. That's when it starts. Like I sent you the message. What's going on, right? Knowing your boundaries and making sure they're healthy is what teaches people how to interact with you and shows a lot of people that might take advantage that you're not worth the risk. And then number 3, and I think the one that nobody talks about because we live in this Karate Kid, Rambo, solo, I am going to be a super agent. I don't need any help. I don't need neighbors because I have Amazon lifestyle. But the third one is community. Who you are around is honestly your best self-defense strategy. If you're around people who are of your best interest in mind, they're protectors, the odds of a predator getting into your circle are so very low. But if you don't have those 3 things locked in, then, sweating on the bag might not be giving you the effect you're looking for.
Those are some great points. And, you remind me too, when you know about yourself and being aware, it's also being aware of resources and different things to help you stay safe.
Great
when
point.
when my daughter was a freshman at Penn, she got a job early morning at a bakery, a part-time job. So she had to walk from her dorm to that bakery, which was all the way on the other side of campus. It's in the dark in the morning. And she was a little nervous. I'm like, they have campus escorts. They'll give you they'll give you a ride in a little golf cart or car or something. Don't walk alone. Call one of those escorts. They wanted to help you because they're bored waiting for somebody to call.
Exactly right.
So, being aware of those kind of resources and taking advantage of them.
Yeah.
Help, keep you safe where you don't have to worry about anything else. Yeah,
exactly. We call it safe walk up here, but yeah, same thing, right? Like what resources do you have? What community supports are there? There's so many things that we don't look at because we live in this world of, oh, I'm Rambo and I have everything I need, right? But that's the argument I always make for this is so special forces, right? It's not special force, it's special forces. And they always go in a group. Even the smallest group I've seen is 3, and that's the SAS. But it's still 3 men, and these are the most alpha predators humans can make. And they're still going in numbers. Why do you think 2 times a week jiu-jitsu is going to change that, right? Like, you should look at your entire lifestyle.
No, great points. And, it gets back to that old saying, don't go to stupid places with
Sure.
stupid people doing stupid things.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are all choices that have a tendency to get you into violence, and bad things happen when you make those kind of choices.
It increases the odds for sure, right? Like, and it increases the odds of, as the kids say, catching a stray. So even though you weren't the intended target, because you're beside said intended target, now you're dragged into something, catching a stray that maybe, you wouldn't have been involved in had you not been in that environment.
We've talked about before and during.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about after, what that part of the book, and what you're teaching when you're talking about the after.
I think after is the part that needs the most communication. A lot of people are writing books on, situational awareness, which is very important. Go read everybody's book, everybody, including mine, obviously, but everybody else's as well, because violence is such a complicated behavior, and one mind can't solve this. You're going to need multiple touch points to deal with this, right? But the aftermath is the part that nobody talks about because it's not cool, right? Your hero story doesn't sound cool with, and then I had 5 weeks of speech therapy. Right? Like, that's not the cool story to tell around the campfire. But I think people need to be really realistic of what even going hands-on risks, right? And to quote Miller, who is my mentor, if dying is on the table, so is being in a wheelchair, and so is pooping into a bag, right? Like, people romanticize this violence so much, like they think they're gonna come in for some heroic thing, and flowers are going to fall like an anime, and they're going to be this massive hero. But you could just roll your ankle trying to run to grab your kid off the swings, and then you're out for 6 to 8 weeks. So with the aftermath, there's two major concerns that I think people need to be aware of. Number one is the short-term aftermath, what happens immediately after whatever high impact event happened. And then there's the long-term aftermath, which has defeated more people than fights have, right? So you have to look at, I've mentioned I've been stabbed. I've seen 2 of my friends die in front of my eyes as bouncers because they got injured in a fight, did not look for injuries because the adrenaline and SSR was taking over the pain mitigation, and then they just died. One bled out like a deer. He was chasing somebody, got stabbed here, or sliced, didn't feel it. And the second guy got stabbed in the back a bunch of times, and literally at the debrief of the fight, I was making fun of him. I was like, dude, you got to run stairs with me, man. Like, your cardio sucks. And then he went down, right? So you need to check yourself for injuries. You might not even know they exist, right? So you need to get yourself safe. You need to look for injuries. This is so very important. I always quote Maya Soderholm here. Dying second is not winning. Right? You have to survive the encounter to get through this. So as the self-defense happens, as soon as the encounter's over, you need to get safe, right? And what I mean by that is, who knows where this happened? I've been in fights in intersections of our major city, right? There's 1.5 million people here, middle of traffic, we've been in brawls. You got to get off that street first, right? Like, number one is you have to get safe because of environmental factors, but also retaliation. What if their friends are coming, et cetera, factors that martial arts don't always consider. Then you need to check yourself for injuries. I have a video on YouTube where I have like an after action kata, we call it, but it's just how to check your body in the best way in order to, like, timetable of death, right? Like, we're checking our neck before we're checking our foot. We're checking our back and ribs before we're checking our arms and legs. Then after that's done, if you have no issues, good, you can move on to the next step. Or if there are issues, you got to call medical attention, right? You need EMS or somebody to deal with it. Then I go over an acronym called SAFE Report. I won't bore everybody with it, but it goes off each point of, like, if you remember this acronym, it'll get everything you need. But basically, it's get safe, make sure you're not hurt. Tell the event to yourself first, right? Because no matter what level of violence you're dealing with, you're going to have to report it to somebody, right? Like I said earlier, whether it's grandma, whether it's the police, whether it's HR. Like, if conflict and violence happens, somebody's going to want some reporting. You don't want the first time you tell your version of the events. When I say version, I don't mean you're lying. I just mean human brains are not perfect recording machines. So when you tell your version, you don't want the first time to be under stress. You want to sit down and go over it. Right? Okay, what happened? And also be aware you might forget stuff that happened, and that's okay. All the research we've seen says you need at least 2 full nights of sleep, full REM sleep. So that means don't drink a bottle of whiskey. That means you have to chill, be sober, have 2 nights of sleep, and then all the memories kind of come back, right? Then you need to, figure out all of your other things. Are you safe to get home? Do you have support? Yada, yada, yada. Then we move to the long term. This is your therapy. This is physiotherapy. This is, counseling, or just sharing what happened. Warriors used to not fight at night and used to be around each other a lot because we didn't have cell phones and cars. Distance was not as big of a place we used to have. And we used to sit around campfires and talk. Oh my God, did you get cut? I got cut. Did you poop your pants? Because I pooped my pants, right? And you would debrief with your friends about what happened. This no longer happens anymore. So you need to talk to somebody about what happened, right? And it doesn't have to be a counselor if you're against therapy. It could be a friend. I do a lot of work with Indigenous First Nation peoples here. That's I don't know what you guys call them, American Indians. I don't know what you call them still or whatever, Native Americans. We call them Indigenous or First Nations here. And I went to a sweat. Me and my daughter went to a sweat with them. That counts as therapy to me, man. We were hitting drums and sweating and talking and sharing stories. But we've lost that debrief story tradition as we go home and, put on our earphones and watch TV and order our meals through Uber Eats, right? We're not chatting with people like we used to. So there's a mental side of this as well. And you need to realize that you might do as well as you think you do. You might feel okay, or you might not feel okay. And also that might switch. And you need to understand all of that. I remember when I got stabbed, the big one, the one that I talk about in the book, I quit martial arts. I'm like, martial arts are BS. I have a black belt. I'm training. I'm Thai boxing. And I got almost killed by a meth head at 155 pounds, right? It frustrated me. And thankfully I found Rory's book. That's what brought me back, right? I was like, oh my goodness. And that was Facing Violence. I highly recommend getting Facing Violence. If you are getting my book and you don't own Miller's books, that's crazy to me. Do that as well. But as I read that, I was like, oh my God, this is what I experienced, right? And that's what this book is it's the fireside chat. It's, oh my goodness, I experienced that. I've been through here. So I think the aftermath is such an important part of the timeline that nobody wants to talk about because it's not sexy. It's the same reason nobody talks about predators being family members, right? Because when there's good guys and good beats evil, that's an easy conversation. But when the bad guy is grandpa and you're bringing back memories after the event, that's a much more difficult conversation. But violence isn't just Street Fighter. Violence comes in lots of forms, including abuse and coercion.
No, those are some great points. And as you were saying things, I was thinking back incidents that I had were related to that. And it's like just some great points that a lot of people aren't covering or talking about.
Yeah, it's more prominent now, but I'm really hoping this boosts the conversation.
And I endorse Rory as well. I need to get him on the show. I haven't had him on the show, and it's been a number of years since I've seen him in person. So I need to touch bases with Rory and get him on the show as well.
Oh, he's the man. He's the man.
If you're not familiar with Rory Miller's books, go to Amazon or YMAA and check out his stuff. Meditations on Violence, Facing Violence. He has a number of books, the conflict communication book. All of them have some really solid information in them.
Agreed. Yeah.
Want to say good morning to Kellen, who here and said good morning. Thank you, Kellen, for being here. Yeah, we've been going over half an hour, so let's sort of wrap things up a little bit. I really appreciate you being on. Before we tell people where to find you, the last question I often like to ask people, it goes with my Enjoy Life Safely website and philosophy. What is something you enjoy doing and something that you make sure helps you do it safely? I've had people on here that do extreme sports, and their safety tip was having good equipment, making sure you're using the proper equipment. I've had other people, they don't do so extreme stuff, but what is something you enjoy and something that helps you enjoy it safely so you can keep doing it with your family for a long time?
What a great question. I am just a sociopathic workaholic, so I don't do a lot of other stuff. You can see behind me, the book is there, but there's also these maps on the wall. The only like kind of thing that I do is Dungeons and Dragons. That's one of my favorite things. We play every couple of weeks with a group of friends. And I think even though that sounds like it's not going to answer your question, I think it really does. Having a group of people around the table and reinforce that community part of self-defense, right? The people that we know, we play with my daughter, there's friends, we vet everybody. Now we have this group of safe humans that we play with all the time and we get to experience and chat and open up other things. So that's my real enjoyment right now is when I'm not on the road or doing this or writing or whatever is we sit down and we fight dragons and goblins and whatever. That's my social aspect. And I think it just builds that community. And the really cool thing about tabletop role-playing games, even though I'm not trying to promote them at all, is if you want to learn conflict communication and you want to learn situational awareness and you want to learn that stuff, there's no better way than tabletop games where people are trying to trick you and beat you and there's puzzles and you learn how to interact and play somebody else. I actually equate my public speaking ability to being a dungeon master for so long because I've been talking to people and chatting, right? So it's increased my communication skills, and that's always a good one to practice.
No, that is awesome. Everybody, you can go to enjoylifesafely.com to check out my information. The recordings of this will be there, my courses, my free guides, books, all that kind of stuff. However, where can we go to get your stuff and get a hold of you, Randy?
Great question. So honestly, I keep the branding really simple. It's just my name. So randykinglive.com is the website. I have 2 free courses on there right now, and they are 100% free. They are not part of the course. You have to pay for it. Realities of Violence, which is my prototype before the book. And I have Realities of Boundary Setting. These are a 4-hour course and a 6-hour course, 100% free, randykinglive.com. Go grab those. Social media, it's all Randy King Live. So Instagram, Facebook, all just type in Randy King Live. I'm obnoxiously on the internet. You will quickly find me and join me there. Give us a follow, especially on Instagram. Followers are going away right now because apparently I had some bot followers I didn't know about. So yeah, join me there. I release videos all the time. Sometimes they're polarizing. Sometimes they're entertaining. It depends on my mood if I feel like being a chaos gremlin or not. But there is a lot of free value on there. So randykinglive.com or Randy King Live everywhere you enjoy short form video.
Best place to get the book.
You know what? At this point in time, wherever you order books from. So YMAA has done a great job of putting it everywhere. So if you want to grab it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, if you're in Canada, Indigo, I would prefer you go to a local bookshop and ask them to bring it in and buy it so you support local brick and mortar. But I'm old, so if that's not cool for you, feel free to get it wherever books are sold. If you go to the website and you click pre-order the book, it should say order now. If you click that button, you can it has links to it, but also there's a field guide if you want to pay a little bit extra. There's like a workbook that comes with it. And last but not least, we're doing a Q&A for the book on the 20th of May, I believe. You can get access to that as well there.
And that's where do you get access at that one?
randykinglive.com. Just go there, click the book, and you'll get sent to the page.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with everybody. Thank you so much for being on the show.
That was great.
Yep. Thank you to everybody that said hello and commented. Thank all of you that are watching replays or listening to the podcast. We appreciate all of you.
Absolutely.
Go out, make it a fantastic Friday. Stay safe. Pick up Randy's book so you can stay even safer. And I'll be back to see you tomorrow. And Randy will be around on social media to see you there too.